Tonight on Joy News Prime, Religious Affairs Minister to provide specific guidelines for the reopening of churches and mosques this Friday. We will bring you that news conference live when it gets underway. Opposition National Democratic Congress demands special audit into COVID-19 alleviation funds.
The NDC calls on the Auditor General of Ghana to undertake a special audit into the expenditure of the amount of 280.3 million Ghana cedis.
The party has also accused the Kufuor administration of using the easing of restrictions for its partisan interest. The pro-MPP Dankwa Institute has meanwhile described as an assault the NDC's opposition to the compilation of a new voters register. Also in this bulletin, policy think tank Imani Ghana, which is also opposed to the compilation of a new voters register, has taken its advocacy to the Asante. And in business, Unipass officially takes over from GCNet amidst confusion at Tema Port.
Go to the ground. It is not working. People are sitting in their offices. Just don't know what they are doing.
We hear from some frustrated clearing agents in business.
My name is Aisha Ibrahim, and Joy News comes to you live from our digital address GA0992539, also on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. We are also live on your screens because we are free to air.
And I'm Israel, anchoring Joy News Prime live on your digital terrestrial TV because we're free to air. Now, as the nation awaits the Religious Affairs Minister to outline guidelines for safe reopening of churches and mosques tonight, there are concerns being raised over enforcement of the President's directive by the institutions mandated to do so. President Kufuor, in his 10th update to the nation on COVID-19, also said final year JHS, SHS and university students can return to school. Ghanaians have been reacting to this, and here are a few of the opinions.
Because here's a Wofio Grano, so Chief Cardinal Patrick Braxton, or may also online. Nina Eska, by Sabaya, Yababon Piasi, Arena no Quentino, or two who watch I say a bear stadiano, and to me, I be say more and never any purpose 100. And I buy bet me 1 hour, bet me a bonfire, and Yamiti, maybe 5 minutes by a bonfire, Yamiti, it's a bonfire, Yamiti.
Okay. Well, essentially, she's excited about the president easing the restrictions. She says that even if 5 minutes they would have to pray in the church, they would be able to do that. And she says she's excited that they have 1 hour to be able to, to pray. But let me find out from her. We shall, social distancing near the idea president car, masks near the idea, say motion mask. At the Tony sorry. We shall bet me.
If I show you bet me. Because say an anti bonting, I be sent me cook me, Mr. Max. Me ko to ade nyina me kasa for max nim nti ye betimi aye ne sa amana ye because e beto you baby be betimi ahye max no ne sanitizer ne so ye betimi use amana timi aye ye se be bebo ye ho ban nti.
Okay. Well, I was just asking her whether the church will be able to stick to the protocol out there, whether the choristers will be able to wear their mask to sing and all of that. She says, I mean, she's in town and she's still wearing a mask, so she doesn't have any problem entering the church with a mask. And she thinks that the churches will be able to adhere to all the protocol, provide hand sanitizers, wear the masks, adhere to social distancing and all.
My problem is if the president said 100 people should attend the church for 1 hour or so, 1 hour. Okay, I think it's good. So 1 hour, then another person, another group of people will enter for another 1 hour. Okay, so I think it's okay. But what I'm thinking is the place will be crowded. Outside the church premises will be crowded. That's my problem.
Okay. The president has eased the restrictions. Are you going to church this Sunday?
Surely I will go to church.
You go to church? Okay. What will change when you're going to church?
Oh, because I have to, my nose mask and this thing, I'm supposed to wear washing hands and those things. I'm supposed to make sure that everything is there.
If that thing is not there, maybe I cannot enter the church room. I have to go back. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. There are those who, some people are kicking against the easing of restriction for churches because they do not think that the churches will be able to adhere to all the protocol. Do you think your church, which church? Do you think your church, ICGC?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think ICGC will be able to adhere to all the protocol?
Yeah, we can, because we are international, so we have to obey what the president has said. So we have to obey it and do it accordingly.
Be crossing over to the Ministry of Information when the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs begins his briefing. Before then, though, ASEPA in Imani Africa have petitioned the Asante Hene Otunfo II to prevail on the Electoral Commission to rescind its decision to compile a new voters register. Well, I'm just being told that the Ministry of Information should be ready to address, or the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs should be ready to address the nation now in a bit. So we're crossing over to the Ministry of Information for that briefing, and we'll get back to you thereafter with the rest of our stories. Stay tuned in.
That we currently live under. As you will recall, Ghana's borders from about the middle of March have been closed as a first-line restriction or a first layer of protection for the Ghanaian population against the potential importation of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, which causes the COVID-19 disease, or what they used to call the novel coronavirus. It's one of the restrictions we live under. That's the closure of our borders. The closure of our borders has not been adjusted. It is still in effect. We also have some other restrictions which by executive instrument we live under, including the total closure of schools, the total ban on religious activities, the total ban on large or mass gathering, among others. His Excellency the President eased about 3 or 4 of those restrictions only. There's a third layer of protection that we always talk about, which we describe as a personal preventive etiquette, which you have to do for yourself, or we all have to do for ourselves. Again, that has not been amended or adjusted in any way. So as we start tonight's conversation, we want to remind everybody that the President has not lifted the ban on several of the activities that he restricted. What he has done is to ease about 4 of those restrictions, not to lift them in totality, but to give just a bit more room as we begin the process of easing some restrictions. It's important to get the context right, so that in how we describe it for people to understand and even for compliance, we're on the same page. This week, a number of ministers of state will join us to speak to what the easing means in their various sectors. Starting tonight is the minister responsible for chieftaincy and religious affairs. For the purposes of our presentation tonight, I will keep referring to him as the minister responsible for religious affairs. He will start off tonight's presentation with us, or the very first of these presentations, on the instruction of the President, explaining to us what the easing of restrictions on religious gatherings actually means, and subsequently answering our questions. As part of his presentation, or to augment his presentation, you'll notice that the President mentioned there's a need to keep a register of the about 100 persons who will be the maximum allowed for any of these religious gatherings. There is technology assist in the putting together, the verification, the eventual use, if need be, of such register. The minister responsible for communications, Donald Esla Owusu Ekufu, will join us to augment the presentation by explaining to us which technology this is and how all of us who need to use that technology can access it. There are some specific matters that deal with science, the science behind some of the limits, for example, the 1 hour, the 100, etc. The presidential advisor, health, Dr. Nsiasari, is with us. He will help us speak to some of us. And we have some of the representatives of some religious bodies here who are here with us and will give some feedback whether indeed they believe they can or they cannot operate within the guidelines that have been outlined. And so tonight we have about 4 parts to our brief, which I'll be sharing with you. As I mentioned earlier, the Honorable Minister, the Honorable Kofi Jamesi is here. He will join me shortly. The Honorable Esla Owusu-Ekofo will join us on the technology bit. Dr. Nsia Sari will speak to us on a bit of the science, and Reverend Professor Frimpong Manso, General Superintendent of the Assemblies of God, will also join us with some commentary. We keep reminding our colleagues back home to observe the etiquette that has been put out, including the social distancing, the use of water and soap to wash your hands, the sanitizers. And you will notice that the notice on our podium, as we are beginning to ease some of the restrictions, has changed. The notice on our podium tonight and throughout this week and in the coming weeks will be reading, "Stay alert. Stay alert." We need everybody, as we ease it more, to stay alert and be up to our collective responsibilities. So, Honorable Minister for Religious Affairs, please join us in your presentation on what this means, easing of restrictions for religious gatherings.
Honorable Minister for Communication, Special Advisor to the President, church leaders, Muslim leaders, all other religions represented here, directors, the media, ladies and gentlemen. The President of the Republic of Ghana, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in his broadcast to the nation on 30th May 2020, announced a further restriction pertaining to the COVID-19 phenomenon. This briefing is to indicate further measures to be followed in addition to the already announced protocols to be observed by all. The Christian, Muslim communities and all other religions are to observe the following strictly. Some Christian bodies worship on Saturdays and others on Sundays. The Muslim communities generally observe worship on Fridays. With effect from Friday, 5th June, the government will begin stage 1 of the process of easing restrictions, and a format for religious services can commence, and all worshippers entreated to dedicate their first service for the prayer for the nation in this challenging time. 25% attendance with a maximum number of 100 congregants can worship at a time in a church or in a mosque with a mandatory 1 meter rule or 3 feet of social distancing between congregants. In addition, all congregants must wear masks at all times, wash hands with soap and running water, or rub with alcohol-based hand sanitizer before entry. Avoid handshaking or body contact. Register details including phone numbers, manually or digitally. Digital registration can be done on GH COVID-19 app, on Panabio's app, which can be downloaded at no cost. And this is the one that the Minister of Education will speak about. General specific protocols for churches. Church must ensure these protocols are observed strictly. Thermometer guns or thermal scanners are provided for checking the temperature of congregants at entry points of all venues as necessary. Ensure no mask, no entry policy. 3. Provision of hand washing facilities with running water and soap and or FDA approved alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Provision of adequate waste management facilities, being scarves, bin liners, and single-use tissues. Provision of adequate toilet facilities for use by members. Regular cleaning and disinfection of frequently used communal places like toilet surfaces and frequently touched surfaces such as doorknobs or handles, preferably every 1 to 2 hours, depending on the rate of utilization. Designate a holding room or area where a person who becomes sick at the premises or at an event can be isolated from others while making arrangements for evacuation. Regular disinfection of venues used by churches, preferably once every month, for example, fumigation and disinfection, must be carried out with a very recognized entities. Trained cleaners with the necessary personal protective equipment and cleaning items to clean the facilities regularly and handle waste appropriately. Provide adequate ventilation, that is, open windows to allow for maximum circulation of fresh air. If possible, avoid confined air-conditioned rooms. Display approved health promotion materials on COVID-19 at vantage points to remind congregants to keep to social distancing protocols, wearing of the mask, regular hand washing, coughing and sneezing etiquette. Ensure a no handshake, no hugging and no spitting policy at all times. Follow established evacuation procedures as outlined in Annex 1 to enable evacuation if a congregant becomes sick during the event and has to be evacuated. Form COVID task force comprising of members who are preferably health workers. They must be trained in health promoting prevention measures, infection prevention and control, and evacuation procedures by Ghana Health Service. The COVID task force should call 112 or 311 for support to enable evacuation if anyone develops fever, cough, and difficulty in breathing during service. Unwell persons are not allowed to attend church. Older persons and people of any age with underlying medical conditions, heart diseases, diabetes, liver disease, and asthma are advised to stay away from church service. Sharing personal items such as watches, jewelry, pens, and phones should be discouraged. If an individual is confirmed positive for COVID-19, all contacts must be traced and screened. No crowd dancing and waving of handkerchiefs during church services. I hope it's clear. Sanitize microphones immediately after each use. All who speak and sing in churches, including pastors, Sunday school teachers, singers, and announcers, must wear face masks during service. Discourage singing in groups. Pre-recorded songs or solos should be used. Pre-packaged communion bread and wine should be picked up by members at the point of entry. Pre-packaged communion bread and wine should be picked up by members at the point of entry. Place offering bowls at the entrance and exit points for members to give offerings and tithes when entering or on their way out of church premises. Encourage cash transfers via mobile money or mobile banking as forms of giving offerings. In observance of social distancing protocols, laying on of hands should not be allowed. Spend at least 5 minutes of church service time to educate church members on COVID-19. Provide separate sitting areas for the aged and for families that are together. The church is encouraged to mobilize resources to help individuals in need, including offering health facilities. General specific protocols for mosque. Mosque leaders must ensure that these protocols are observed. Thermometer guns or thermal scanners must be provided for checking the temperature of members at entry points of all venues as necessary. Ensure a no entry policy. Provision of hand washing facilities with running water and soap and or FDA approved alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Provision of adequate waste management facilities. Provision of adequate toilet facilities for use by members. Regular cleaning and disinfection of frequently used communal places like bathroom and toilet surfaces and frequent touch surfaces such as doorknobs, handles, preferably every 1 to 2 hours depending on the rate of utilization. Designate a holding room or area where a person who becomes sick at the premises can be isolated from others while making arrangements for evacuation. Regular disinfection of venues. Use mass gathering, preferably once every month. Professional cleaners with the necessary protective equipment and cleaning items to clean the facilities regularly and handle waste appropriately. Provide adequate ventilation, that is, open windows to allow for the maximum circulation of fresh air. If possible, avoid confined air-conditioned rooms. Display approved health promotion materials on COVID-19 at vantage points to remind people to keep to social distancing protocols, wearing of masks, regular hand washing, coughing, and sneezing etiquette. Ensure a no handshake, no hugging, and no spit policy at all times. Follow established evacuation procedures to enable evacuation of a participant if a participant becomes sick during the event has to be evacuated. Form COVID task force comprising of members who are preferably health workers. They must be trained in health promotive prevention measures, infection prevention and control, and evacuation procedures by Ghana Health Service. The COVID task force should call 112 or 31 for support to enable evacuation if anyone develops fever, cough, and difficulty breathing during the gathering. Unwell persons are not allowed to attend mosques. Old persons and people of any age with underlying medical conditions, heart diseases, diabetes, liver disease, and asthma are advised to stay away from going to the mosque. Sharing personal items such as watches, jewelry, pens, and phones should be discouraged. If an individual is confirmed positive for COVID-19, all contacts must be traced and screened. Ensure each worshipper uses their personal mask, sajada, or disinfected mask provided by the mosque before and after use. Ablution should be performed in the house by adherents before entering the mosque. Use easily removable footwear such as slippers. Allow people to come out of the mosque to collect slippers one after the other instead of crowding at the entrance. Put a bowl at the entrance of the mosque, the offering of fisabidale. Sanitize microphones immediately after each use. Spend at least 5 minutes of worship time to educate mosque attendees on COVID-19. All other religious organizations, including traditional religions, should follow the general safety protocols. Enforcement. Self-regulation is through churches, mosques, and all other religious organizations. But the Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, local government, in collaboration with Ghana Health Service officials, shall take enforcement responsibilities. Where necessary, the state security services shall ensure enforcement of these protocols. There will be random enforcement checks to ensure compliance. A church or mosque or other religious bodies that violate the laid down protocols will be dealt with appropriately. A church, mosque, or other religious organizations in violation could be closed down. The leaders in charge will equally be held liable. The district assemblies and monitoring teams are on hand to ensure compliance with the directives. Every church or religious body must be registered with the Registrar General and their church or worship premises registered with the appropriate municipal, metropolitan, or district assemblies. Monitoring and evaluation. The Ministry of Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs, local government, in collaboration with health officials, will continue to monitor and evaluate key indicators to establish the transmission levels of the virus. The approach will include benchmarking and rapid learning to inform decision-making and tactical adaptations to the overall strategy and hotspot specifics. Contingency outbursts. If there is an unexpected outburst in infections within a public event or community, government has put health workers and the security services, including the police service and the armed forces, on standby to coordinate rapid response of human resource and logistics, and if necessary, to cordon off, impose a curfew, trace, test, and treat infected persons in the affected community. Digital technology. Digital technology will be used to complement tracing, testing, and treating, as well as monitoring of indicators. Annex 1, evacuation procedures. Actions to be taken when dealing with a sick person. Obtain the person's details, name, organization, contact person, immediate family member details, including a phone number. Inform the sick person that they will be separated or isolated due to symptoms. Minimize contact between the sick person and all other persons and direct to the pre-designated holding room. The sick person must always wear a face mask and observe social distancing at all times. Organizers of the COVID task force must call 112 or 311 or link up with local district health authorities for immediate evacuation or medical help. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, thank you for taking us through the guidelines for the easing of restrictions for religious gatherings. As I mentioned, colleagues, throughout this week, various ministers of state will be joining us with the details of their guidelines as well, and we'll be taking your questions. Now, as he mentioned, the keeping of the register is an important part of this. And there's technology that is available to assist event organizers, particularly mosques and churches that desire to use that kind of platform to make their work easy. I want to invite the Honorable Minister for Communications, the Honorable Esla Osu Ekofo, to speak to the subject of technology available to assist this purpose. Honorable Minister.
Evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mine is a very short task. As we know, we need to find a way to monitor compliance with the 25% or 100 people maximum limit that is allowable, permissible for attendance in churches, conferences, funerals, mosques, and other events during this period that the restrictions have been slightly eased. We believe that with technology we can help ourselves and help our members also stay compliant. We have developed an app which would help us monitor, help us stay compliant with all of these. It's called the PANA BIOS app. It's a short form of African Biosecurity, Biosurveillance app. And we're trialing out Ghana, and hopefully it will be rolled out in the rest of the continent, since we're working in unison with the African Union and a group known as the Afro Champions, a group of African corporate giants. Let me just put it that way. This application would also be available by a link to the COVID-19 tracker app, which we have already launched and which is already in use. Now, briefly speaking, event organizers would have to download the application and register the event and the venue that the event is taking place. For events which multiple for venues which hold multiple events, they can even number it, event number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So people can also download this app and pre-book that I want to attend event 3 or at such and such a time. Now, if the first event is oversubscribed, they automatically will move you to the next one and send you a notification that you are attending the second or third service on this third Sunday of the month, so you can also plan. For large churches that already have known attendees and have known registers, they can use their own processes but provide the information when required by Ghana Health Service. Now, the importance of keeping track of everybody who attends every function at your meeting should be obvious to all of us. In the event that there is an outbreak at a particular venue at a particular time, the contact tracing team would need to know everybody who was at that venue at that time, so that it would ease the tracing and testing and treatment of those who may have contracted the illness. So for our collective peace of mind, every event, every venue needs to keep an accurate register of everyone who attends those functions, so that when need be, you can provide that information to the health authorities and they can help others. Once the venue is registered, a QR code will be generated with a passcode as well. It will also be USSD compliant. So even for those who do not have smartphones, you can also use *769# to call in, dial in, and book for the event if you know the passcode for that event already. So you can just indicate that I'm booking for this passcode or for this event at such and such a time, and follow the prompts and be registered. Where this should be available within the next 48 hours, 48 to 72 hours. They're currently working on it as I speak. So if you go to the App Store now and you try to download it, you will not find it. We're working with the technical people to ensure that it's available latest by Thursday for download either on the MOC website, on the Transcorp website, on the Ministry of Information website. MOC is Ministry of Communications website, Ministry of Information website, Ghana Health Service website, Transcorp website, on the GH COVID-19 app. And hopefully by Thursday it will be available for download on both Google Play and App Store. I'm still working with the technical people, so I cannot confirm its availability for download from the App Store or Google Play at this time. but by Thursday it will be available for download on all these websites and on the GH COVID-19 Tracker app. That is the Panabios app. We hope that you would all stay compliant, work with us so that we all help each other. Now, the fields that will be required to be filled in when you register on the app would be your name, your age, your sex, your telephone number, and your digital address. That will all be required and will be mandatory. Hope that the religious organizations can also help members who do not have smartphones, who have not registered for their digital addresses, to also generate their digital addresses to help facilitate their easy location in the event of an incident occurring. We are all praying that no such incident will occur in any of our public gatherings. However, we can't be too careful, and there's nothing wrong with being prepared in the event of any eventuality occurring. So in a nutshell, these are the measures that we're putting in place. The link on the DH COVID-19 Tracker app, which will lead you to download this meeting management system that we're putting in place. If any church, any establishment has any existing way of registering their members and providing an accurate, updated information on attendance at any of their functions, they're free to use that. However, they must ensure that everybody who attends that service is registered and their details recorded in the event that it may be required if any outbreak occurs in that establishment. And once the QR code is generated and you have a smartphone, if you log into the app on your device as well, a code is also generated which you can just scan on the code at the event venue, and it locks you in automatically, and everybody knows that you're locked in. For many of those who've attended international conferences, similar registration, technical electronic registration procedures are required. So your event ID card itself has a QR code on it or is chip embedded. So every time you enter the location and you swipe it, your details are logged in automatically. This is our attempt to also generate a similar system to assist all events organizers with a similar process. But as I've indicated, the importance of registering every member who attends every session is to provide an accurate record of attendees when required by the Ghana Health Service. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, thank you for that, may I use the word augmentation, on how, the word augmentation, on how, or an augmentation to Honourable Minister responsible for religious affairs put out, on how we can use platforms in general, but specifically this particular platform, to make it easier to and make available a register. Colleagues, we'd like to inform you that overnight, on the Ministry of Information website and social media handles, we will be publishing these guidelines that have been announced so that the religious community, etc., can pick it up, and you, our colleagues in the media, you can also pick it and amplify it on your mass media platforms. You've been very helpful so far. We once again call on you to help us to pick the guidelines. We'll put them out overnight on the Ministry of Information website and social media handles, and then you can amplify them some more for us. Now, ahead of tonight's press briefing, we got a number of queries asking about why 100, why 1 hour. I very quickly want to invite Dr. Nsiansari, give him a couple of minutes to speak to those two matters. Why 100, why 1? Why didn't you say 1.5 hours? Why didn't you say 45 minutes? Why 1 hour? Is there any science or something behind it, or is there a number that we just come up with? So please join us help us to understand why 100, not 150, not 130, not 200, why 1 hour, why these parameters that you are given. Then after that, I'll take questions. Please join us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. As you all are aware, we in Ghana, we have studied what other countries are doing in the easing. So we decided to embark on a strategic, controlled, progressive, safe easing of the ban on gatherings to get our lives, both religious life, social life, economic life, back to normal. So we decided on an abridged form of service. And this abridged form of service, we say 25% of attendance. But maximum number of people who will be in attendance for any service will be 100. The reason being that if you say 25% of attendance in this room, and you say also 100, I'm sure people who will sit in this room will be less than 100. So if the people are less than 100, so I will bring 100 people to fill this room. In addition, we said there will be a mandatory 1 meter social or physical distancing. So all what we are trying to do is to make sure that we observe the social distancing within a confined environment. So if you have a very small room, what it means is not 100. You don't say that because the room that I'm using is small, so I'm going to put 100 people in the room because it's 100. That's why we say 25% of your total attendance. If you have a room which takes about 10,000 people, and you say 20% of the 10,000 is 2,500. So we don't want a lot of people at the same place at the same time, confined environment. The risk is very high if you put a lot of people in an enclosed environment for a longer time. The virus will be around the days, especially if you have air-conditioned, cold, dry environment. That's why we also said that as much as possible, the room that you want to do your service, if possible, put off the air conditions and open the window for free flow air. So the question of 25% I have explained. The question of 100 maximum congregants I also explained, so that we don't put a lot of room within the same environment. And the timing is also very important. If you sit in an enclosed environment with 100 or a number of people within the environment for more than 1 hour, the chances of acquiring somebody is positive, and then infecting people in the room is very high. So it's a profile, the risk profile is that what we have done, that you don't infect people unnecessarily. Secondly, we don't want so many people at a time, so it becomes difficult to, if you are doing contact tracing. Because if you have a lot of people, say 2,500, it means you have to go back after the registration the Honorable Minister talk about, because we register all people, we register their names, their contacts of all the worshippers. It will be easier contact tracing them and also knowing where they are. In addition to the hand washing, hand sanitizers, and also maximum duration of 1 hour. If you put all these things together, the number of the people in the room, making sure the room is airy and free flow of air, then we'll be reducing the rate of infection, and the profile of the people can easily also be found so that we can trace them at any time. So that is the science behind it. We didn't choose a 1 hour arbitrary, we didn't choose 100 maximum arbitrary, but we look at what's happening in other countries. And this, as I said, this is a strategic, controlled, progressive easing. We don't want to come and then go and hit the wall and then come back, as it's happening in some other countries, where after the easing, people started going to church, and they say about 100 people, 200 people are becoming infected. So that's the reason why these numbers have been chosen. After all, for the past weeks, we have not been going to church at all. We don't even have one congregant in the church. But now we are giving 25% or maximum 100 people. So what our advice is that if you can agree to do a lot of services a day, and please make use of your associate pastors. It's a time for associate pastors to also participate in church service. And like I'm a surgeon, sometimes when you go to theater, stand there and operate, you have to finish operating the people before you leave. Sometimes from 6 a.m. to about 12 midnight. The same thing on Sunday. as a pastor, when you go there, it's the job that is a profession as well as vocation. So you can do a series of services. You do 1 hour service, you close your associate pastor after 30 minutes after cleaning the chairs, and he will do another service, you will come. So by the time you finish, if you have 2,000 or 3,000 people, you will finish the church service. And you can also do service every day. So we heard that people are saying that the church service is only for Sunday. It is not true. You can do church service so far as you abide by maximum 100 or 25% of your attendance, so far as you have 1 meter social or physical distancing, and then you have all the necessary things in place. But in all situations, you should be in mask. Even when you are singing, be in mask. Thank you.
Can we set up the microphone? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take questions at this point in time. Colleagues, you have questions, give me a wave. I invite you to the podium. The regular aspects have their hands up. Yes, could you? Are there other questions? Yes, sir. That looks like a reverend minister, but I can't make him out because of his mask, because I see a collar down there. Yes, sir. Are you joining us? Okay, please do. Kojo, let's start. I'll come to you, Reverend. I'll come to you.
I'm Kojo from CGTV. I just want to know that we have mega churches in the country who have multiple facilities to hold different groups of church members. So the restriction is that they shouldn't have more than 100 church members. So for example, if I go to a church like the Action Chapel, where there are multiple facilities to hold 100 each of the worshippers, are they also allowed to, are they breaching the laws? I didn't find out.
So can you have different groups of 100
church members,
different facilities
on the same church premises?
Yes, I just want to narrow down your question. Your question is, can you have different groups of 100 persons in different facilities on the same church compound?
Yes, please.
The question. We'll get you an answer.
All right, so we've just coming over from the Ministry of Information, where there's been a news briefing by the Minister for Chieftaincy and Religious Affairs. We've also heard from the Minister of Communications. Essentially, they have been providing specific guidelines for the reopening of churches and mosques, highlighting the potential points of contact which could facilitate transmission of COVID-19. So that, for instance, no crowd dancing and waving of handkerchiefs during church services, pre-packaged communion bread and wine to be picked up by congregants at the point of entry, and a number of them. Right now, you're watching Joy News Prime on Joy News TV, but you're also listening to us on Joy 99.7 FM. We're taking a break at this point. It's the question and answer segment or point on the news conference. We're here on TV. We're bringing you the business news, so do stay tuned in. That comes up in a bit, but that'll be it for those of you who are listening to the news conference on radio. This is Joy News Prime. Stay tuned in.
And it's time now for business. Sandra Feno is here with details. Hi,
yes, we're going to the port issues there. And so we are coming to you late than usual, but we still have some news to catch up with. And some freight forwarders and clearing agents at the Tama Port are calling on government to extend the transition period between GCNet and West Blue system to the newly integrated customs management systems. They explained, even though they have gone through preparatory stages for some months now, there are some challenges that could impede the transition period. The system which took effect today was hit with some challenges. Let's hear from a freight forwarder.
He
meanwhile, when you go to the grounds, it is not working. People are sitting in their offices. Just don't know what they are doing. Do you understand? So whatever he came to tell us or whatever he's saying, it's just a mere rhetoric.
Meanwhile, Colonel Kojo Damwa, Commissioner of Customs, entreated importers, exporters and freight forwarders to exercise patience since the process is new.
I wanted you to see me face to face, then I talk to you, okay? Now, you are important stakeholders in this whole business about clearing goods. We have come here to appreciate you. We know the good job you've been doing. We have given information in the past few weeks and to some extent months about the changes that were about to take place. Now, today marks a different milestone in your operations. We are aware if you start any new thing, you are likely to have one or two challenges. So we concede that some of you genuinely have some concerns. That is why we have moved all the way from Accra to you to listen to you and then find solutions to your problems. We anticipated this, and therefore we had help desks where some of our experienced officers are already positioned to listen to you, know the types of problems that you have, and then each and every one of you, the appropriate solutions will be found for you. So what we ask of you now is to remain calm, put your concerns together. There are some of you who are here because you have issues of shipping lines, some delivery order, whatever. So all those type of challenges, we'll put them together and then we'll let you see our officers who will be able to help you out.
In other news, government says it is keen on improving security for digital payments to ensure many Ghanaians embrace the new way of transactions. This follows the launch of a new digital payment roadmap developed by the Ministry of Finance and United Nations-based firm Better Than Cash Alliance. Speaking on the project, Director of Financial Sector Division at the Ministry of Finance, Samson Aklego, assured consumer protection is key under the policy. More details in the following report.
The policy document highlights initiatives that will deepen financial inclusion and accelerate economic growth through digital payment systems. Despite some successes chalked in the use of digital payments over the years, the country has experienced some fraudulent financial activities, especially mobile money fraud. Director of Financial Services at the Ministry of Finance, Samson Aklego, assured that consumers are well protected under the new policy.
It's actually a very strong element of the policy if you go through that talk about consumer protection, and that also talks about financial education and awareness, and really all these things are drawn from the lessons that we have learned even from the recent financial sector cleanup.
He has also expressed confidence that regulators and other stakeholders will work together to make the policy a success.
Quite frankly, these strategies were developed together with stakeholders. In fact, it is a government policy that was done together with private sector participants. This was done with the likes of the World Bank and Better Than Cash and SIGAP. All the regulators on the financial sector were included, and therefore it is more of maybe a Ghana document, so it's not really like government alone.
The new initiative is expected to contribute to the ongoing financial inclusion agenda by the government.
We hit the commodity market now to see how trading activities fared today. That That'll be all for business tonight. Let's do the same time tomorrow, but you can log on to myjoyonline.com/business for more business news updates. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Sandra Esenamapeno.
Welcome back to Joy News Prime. Now, SEPA and Money Africa have petitioned the Asantehene Otumfuo II to prevail on the Electoral Commission to rescind its decision to compile a new voters register. Representatives of the two institutions met with the Asantehene Council in Kumasi on Monday. Joy News monitored developments outside the main venue of the closed-door discussion. Imani President Franklin Kujo and ASEPA President Thompson Mensah have been speaking with Joy News.
Mani had written officially to the Asantehene and the Asantehene Council to request audience to basically tell them about our issues. I mean, the civil society related issues on the electoral commission's processes for the elections. And so we came and we did a presentation. Justifiably, Asantehene decides that they would also listen to the EC, and so then they will see what advice they can offer, which I think is fair. Don't forget that the National Affairs Chiefs has just issued a press statement saying that the EC has denied them opportunity to, I mean, they've invited the EC about three times, and the EC has not honored any of those invitations. I don't think it's fair. I would wish, and I do hope, that they will not deny the Asantehene. It's just not, I don't think that is even feasible. But we took the step to come and brief Asantehene Council about the vexed issues. And as I've said, they have decided that they will hear, listen, and then if they have cause to believe that they have made justifiable claims, they also have to listen to the other side. So,
quite recently, we've seen a number of pronouncements on TV and on radio about violence and what have you, and we feel that the direction in which our country is going could be a bit, problematic for all of us if we don't take steps to address those situations now. And so we felt that it's important that we petition the Asantehene.
In another development, the opposition National Democratic Congress's opposition to the new voters register is an assault to the country's democracy. That's according to the executive director of the Dankwa Institute, Richard Ahiagba. At a news conference Monday, Mr. Ahiagba observed that the processes leading to the compilation of the current voters register was fraught with illegalities. He insists there cannot be any reasonable justification to defend the use of the existing register. The executive director of Dankwa Institute backed the Electoral Commission's quest to compile a new register despite the COVID-19 pandemic.
The current register of voters, which contains names of persons who have not established qualification to be registered, is not reasonably accurate or credible. The persons referred to in that ruling are people who use the NHIA card to register as voters. This means that to the extent that we know, even today, that there are people on the electoral roll with the NHIA card as their base document of identification or as a form of proof of qualification, which according to the Supreme Court are not legible to be on the register, there cannot be any reasonable justification whatsoever, be it cost, time, procurement difficulties, or even COVID-19, to defend the use of such a register. Any attempt, as it appears some groups have committed themselves, is clearly an assault on our democracy, the rule of law and conscience. Such persons are purveyors of illegality and an imminent threat to our fledgling democracy.
Also in this bulletin, ahead of the Electoral Commission's compilation of a new voters register, Director of Electoral Services at the Electoral Commission, Dr. Sribo Kwako, has cautioned against the bearing of false witness by acquaintances and family relations of persons who may not have the primary documents required for a new ID. Dr. Sribo spoke with my colleague Roland Walker, who asked him about how the Commission is preparing following the President's announcement of easing the restrictions.
Who guarantees for the guarantor that the guarantorship and his actions are real and true?
No, is it like
who verifies that me?
We don't have any. It's like going to the court to swear. If you tell lies, they call it what do they call it? They call it, there's a code that if you tell lies,
perjury.
Perjury, good. So you lied. You lied. So if you know that the person is qualified, the person doesn't need to be a relative. You can vouch for the person. But if you know that the person is not qualified and you are lying and it's found out, then you have to answer for
Is this
perjury.
not a recipe for chaos?
It's like even somebody may hold a passport, somebody may hold a Ghana card, and the person can be arrested because he acquired it fraudulently. It's possible. Because you may hold a passport when you are not a Ghanaian. It's not possible. So if you're holding the passport, holding the Ghana card is not enough, because if somebody knows you, the person can challenge you that even though you're holding a Ghana card or you're holding a passport, you don't qualify to register because you are underage, because you are not Ghanaian. The person can challenge you.
The full interview will air on the AM show on the Joy News channel on Tuesday. The show begins at 6 a.m. Please make a date. The African Americans in Ghana have been protesting to demand an end to racism in the U.S. and justice for George Floyd, who was killed by a white police officer sometime last week. The killing has outraged many in the U.S. and spurred protests in several cities. Here in Ghana, President Akufo-Addo took to Facebook to react to the killing, expressing his condolence on behalf of Ghanaians. And the comments read, "Black people the world over are shocked and distraught by the killing of an unarmed black man, George Floyd, by a white police officer in the United States of America. It carried with it an all too painful familiarity and an ugly reminder. It cannot be right that in the 21st century, the United States, this great bastion of democracy, continues to grapple with the problem of systematic racism. On behalf of the people of Ghana, I express my deep condolences to the family and loved ones of the late George Floyd. We stand with our kids and kin in America in these difficult and trying times, and we hope that the unfortunate tragic death of George Floyd will inspire a lasting change in how America confronts head-on the problems of hate and racism." Now, African Americans in Ghana would rather hit the street to have their voices heard. Scores of them gathered at the premises of the Diaspora Africa Forum to press home demands for equality. Maxwell Agbagba has more in the following report.
Violent protests across the United States of America as citizens demand justice for African-American man George Floyd, who died hours after being tortured by police. His final words, "I can't breathe," will stick in the minds of many.
If we must die, let us die as men and women face our enemy square in the eye. Right. And not as victims and hogs picked down in a corner. Yes. So in that respect, let us respect.
Here in Ghana, on the compound of the Diaspora Africa Forum, Executive Secretary of the Pan Affairs Foundation prays for the souls of the many African Americans who have died through police brutality. The man, well known as Rabbi in the group here, are demanding justice for George Floyd.
And America must look at its very DNA and have a blood transfusion to change its nature, because this is what they have been doing over the years. This is how they have viewed African people and people of African ancestry. This is how they have viewed Africa. The policies that they have in relation to Africa are a result of this racism.
What are your demands?
That justice is done and reforms take place within the system of the American system. We first seek justice, and we also seek reform. The system must be reformed so that it does not allow for these things to happen with a comfortability that nothing will be done.
Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Tourism Authority, Akwesi Agyeman, played a tremendous role in bringing thousands of African Americans to the country during the year of return. He's part of some Ghanaians here solidarizing with the group as the demand for justice grows.
So we cannot breathe and we cannot look on. And so on behalf of the Beyond the Return Committee, we're here to show solidarity to our brothers and sisters who are here as we all march on and present our petition that enough is enough. This is one more death too many, and it must stop. I'll ask all of us to go back reflecting. This is not about people being violent on the streets. This is about putting an end to injustice.
Jimmy is an African American in his early 60s. He shares his experience with racism back in the U.S.
Grew up working on farms, cropping tobacco, picking cotton, doing all of those things that slaves did. So I've been called nigger and I've been called all different kinds of names all my life, and I've seen other people falsely accused, and all you got to do is be accused of looking at a white woman. They come to your house at night and they take you out and hang you like they did so many of our brothers who died for the cause.
Come out, because it is time for us as humans to treat each other with respect. We demand it, we call for it, and if not...
Princess Okansi has lived in the U.S. for decades, but has now returned to Ghana. But her daughter still lives there. She's demanding an end to racism and justice for George Floyd.
But one thing we did notice in America was that there was I have white friends, and they were good people to me. But there's a system that was built 400 years ago to ensure that the black people will be kept down, because there was supposed to be free labor to the United States. 200 years came, 1863. Emancipation Proclamation was said. But even that took 2 years for it to get to Texas. America owes African Americans so much because America was built on the back of African Americans. We're saying that that system that calls for African Americans to be kept down must be shut down.
All the attendees to what organizers say is funeral for George Floyd have one demand: justice and an end to racism.
Justice and an end to end racism indeed, and that'll be it. We'll be back shortly with sports. Please stay tuned in.
Thank you for joining us on Sports. I'm Gary Al Smith. Now, following the President's directives yesterday, the National Sports Authority have reacted. They have given the green light for individual non-contact sports to resume training. You might have heard the President say that non-contact sports will be allowed now. Now, question was, what constitute non-contact sports? And these 14, according to the National Sports Authority, are under that umbrella: athletics, badminton, table tennis, golf, powerlifting, weightlifting, cycling, draft, parasports, rowing and canoeing, baseball, softball, horse racing, and squash. So if you take part in any of these sports, then you have the green light to begin training only. You can't have organized events, just training for now. Today is the 1st of June, and it also happens to be the birthday of not just the GFA president, but another long-serving Black Star, Samuel Inkum. These days, he's based in Georgia, and he says he cannot wait to return to action following the COVID-19 pandemic.
I think if I'm not wrong, we are going to play like empty stadium. And also we did the test yesterday before the training. We also have to wear the masks if we are training, and also on the bench as well. We have to make sure we put the masks as well. And also, I think there will be a hand sanitizer as well to also clean our hands. There will be a soap, I think every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. So I think they have done it. For me, it's one of the proper structure that I've seen. I think it's going to be one of the for me, I would say one of the hard way now, because before we have to play like more 30-something games, including the Georgian Cup as well. But now everything have changed, and we're supposed to finish the league in November as well. So I believe that the league is going to be interesting to me.
Samalinkum is 31 today. So that's it for the sport for now. Thank you very much for your time. I'm Gary Al Smith, and let's do more with Hans Mensah Andor on Fan Zone later tonight.
All right, and that'll be it for the bulletin for tonight. I'm Israel Ai, bringing you the news from home. Thank you. It's been nice doing this with you, Aisha Ibrahim.
Of course, it's been nice doing that with you, Israel. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. PM Express is at 9 p.m. Stay tuned in. There's an interview with the Deputy Energy Minister. You don't want to miss that. But right now, we also have...